Hi, I'm Daryl from Incapto. Today I'm speaking with Timo Bartel from Cancom Germany, a customer using Incapto deploy Cisco as a service. Incapto is a platform purposely designed to help IT service providers sell, activate and support managed services at scale. Hello, Timo.
Hi, great to be here. It's a pleasure. I'm a business development manager working at Cancom, based in Germany, responsible for network and security solutions. I've been with Cancom for around 5 years now, working together with Incapto. Always great, and happy to be here.
Well, thanks for joining us today, Timo. Can you perhaps tell us a little bit about Cancom?
Yeah, sure. Well, Cancom is mostly based in Germany. This year we actually celebrated 30 years of existence. So founded in 1992, started as a system integrator for the whole IT portfolio, starting from laptops up to servers and rack housing, and we've got own data centers. We've been shifting to the service provider business a lot lately, did focus on that quite strongly. Just to talk about a little bit more about Cancom, we're around 4,000 employees, based all over Europe, mostly in Germany, in Austria, in Belgium, and in Slovakia. And yeah, that's mostly it.
Yeah, well, congratulations! 30 years. That's quite a track record.
Yeah. Sadly, due to Corona, not being able to celebrate it as big as we wanted to. Yeah. It's been quite a journey, and honestly, 30 years is quite something.
Yes, absolutely. So I wanted to talk about managed services specifically today. I guess, we hear more and more about managed services, or, as a service, everything as a service in the market. What are they? How would you describe that?
So managed service, classical managed service business, from our point of view, actually means, okay, we've got a customer who's maybe got existing equipment or just bought new equipment, and being a managed service provider simply means taking over the IT operations. Usually, from our point of view, managed service always means it's customer-owned equipment, and we are the service provider, have managed it SLA-based and whatnot. And from our point of view as well, the topic as a service, which of course came from names like infrastructure as a service from the huge vendors like Amazon or Microsoft, with the compute power in the data centers, which has been transferred to the whole IT portfolio. And from my point of view, you mentioned Cisco already. Network as a service, a huge part of our portfolio, which simply means offering the customer the whole networking experience, including all the equipment, as a service for a monthly fee based on the actual hardware used. In that case, there's a strong shifting from CapEx to OpEx. So as a service always means customer does not need to invest in infrastructure, in own hardware, and that of course is transferable throughout the whole IT portfolio.
Yeah. Look, absolutely. I mean, there's been a significant shift in the way customers are now buying their IT as they transition from those large CapEx purchases to OpEx type monthly fees.
Honestly, we all use service models throughout our daily life. It's the Netflix model. Everything is consumable for a monthly fee, or Spotify regarding music streaming, or the other vendors over there. And it's simply, we're not going to the store and buying CDs anymore. We're just streaming content, and we're just consuming, and that is a business model that is strongly transferred to the business environment right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that in mind, I mean, how strategic are managed services for Cancom?
Yeah, I mentioned we started shifting from the classical service provider business, from the classical solution system integrator business to the service provider business. And I mean, it's always a challenging transformation, but from our point of view, it definitely is the right way to go. We're noticing a huge increase in customers' demand regarding service offerings, regarding as a service or managed service. And we're noticing all over the world, qualified personnel is missing. We simply don't have enough IT personnel anymore. And the only solution to that problem, honestly, is going for services. So it's been a key focus throughout the last 6 or 7 years, let's say. And the feedback we're getting is showing that it's definitely the right way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and events over the last few years have really sort of brought to focus the need for trusted partnership as businesses just try and shift and transition. Hybrid work is here to stay. Trusted partners, play a significant role in that.
Exactly. And once again, that's honestly transferable throughout the whole portfolio. The first as a service we actually started with is network as a service, which we are working very closely together nowadays. But it's also been, we've got a broad portfolio of service offerings nowadays with network, firewall, internet security, devices, storage, compute systems in our own data centers, and it's a huge demand.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what would you say the key benefits of managed services are, for the customers?
There's a couple of benefits actually, and starting with the already mentioned shift from CapEx to OpEx, which is always a huge financial benefit, honestly, and I'm getting the feedback from CFOs we're talking with that it's actually their strategy to move costs from CapEx to OpEx as much as possible. Regarding the actual IT operation, we already mentioned the missing IT personnel, the shortage of qualified personnel. That's definitely one of the main targets for service offerings. And what definitely does not have to be overlooked is the fact of flexibility and security. Like consuming services always means it's SLA based. It always means if something actually happens, I've got a partner to talk to, and the partner is responsible to restore everything. And that's actually a huge benefit for the whole operation security. Like as a customer, I can always be sure that my infrastructure is working, and that's honestly with working from home, working from anywhere, with all the changes we noticed throughout the last 2 years in how we actually work together. Functionality is a huge point in IT, and that has always to be assured. And the last point I wanted to mention is actually the flexibility. We already mentioned subscription models we are using as private persons, and the flexibility regarding quitting on a monthly basis and upgrading, downgrading, or upsizing, that is always possible in these OpEx models. Because honestly, if we're thinking about network infrastructure, usually we say every 5 years I'm going to refresh my infrastructure. I have to make huge investments. And with these service models, I'm always able to just add a new office. I've got a home office worker who agreed to work from a different nation for a couple of months, just renting an Airbnb and working from over there. And that's a flexibility that's definitely a huge benefit.
Yeah, it's often a point that's overlooked, just that ability to scale, not only scale up, but scale down as well, as and when you need for a fee. That can move from month to month. And another point you mentioned really was just anything that allows customers to focus on running their business and and not their IT is a win for customers.
I think we're talking to a lot of customers who actually don't even have an IT department anymore, but they need functioning infrastructure. And it's a great partnership with those customers because there's a mutual trust and just great work.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's what we hear. It's what all the research says, that businesses are searching for trusted partners. So What does the future of managed services look like for CANCOM? You know, what do you plan? What do you have now? What might you have in the future?
In that case, we actually got two work streams. I mean, I already mentioned that we did started focusing on managed as a service offerings a couple years back. And of course, during that time, we already developed a lot of service offerings. We're focusing a lot on standardization, actually. So like just scaling through standardization and automation. And of course, already existing offerings can always be improved. For example, from our point, the first and best example actually is our network as a service, which was the first service offering, which now has been improved in offering a self-service model for customers using Incapto. So the one stream we're working on is, of course, to always improve existing offerings, gathering customer feedback, and simply improving and evolving services. And the other part is, of course, creating new services. Like there's always new and hot topics in the IT. Let's talk about SASE, let's talk about zero trust, and all the security that has been usually strongly in focus throughout the last 2 years, I guess. There's a lot of opportunity to create new services or develop new services. And of course, start focus a little bit more on vertical approaches. Like, of course, we can always drill down the network infrastructure and say, okay, you can use an access point at a hospital, you can use an access point at a school, and you can use an access point at your office. But there are three totally different environments and locations, and totally different use cases to address. And of course, this is a strong focus on just speaking customer language constantly and offering the right use cases. Because that's actually something you always have to think about if you're talking about managed as a service. Nobody really cares anymore if the next point is 3 bands or 4 or 4.4 or 2 times 2.
Yeah.
It's about usability. And it just has to work, and I want to use it, I want to consume it, and problems only start when it's not there anymore. And addressing these use cases is huge for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we couldn't agree more. Businesses want outcomes. They're not interested in 4x4 MIMO. Of course, they get the benefits of that, but they want solutions or propositions that talk to their exact business needs. Yeah, without a doubt, and services that grow over time as new technologies come along, like SASE, of course, to help with the exploding or the here to stay work from home phenomenon. How does Incapto, I mean, you touched upon it there briefly, but how does Incapto help CANCOM, and and how does it help your customers?
Well, first of all, it's a huge benefit for customers to always be able to see what actually is happening inside of the network. It's when we started 5 years ago with Network as a Service, we got a little bit of feedback like, okay, it's a little bit of a black box. I'm not really sure anymore what's happening inside of my network. And that's, of course, totally understandable concerns customers are having. Like every IT leader at a customer's location, he needs to know what is happening, even if the actual IT operation is done by a service provider. He needs to be sure what's happening, which devices are actually being used at my location. Is everything licensed correctly? How's the latency? And just being able to see what the end users are feeling. And that is the huge factor why we did choose Incapto, or why we did choose to integrate that in our service solution. And the other part, how Incapto is actually helping us, we as CANCOM got a huge marketplace as a sales channel, and Incapto is offering us a lot of automation regarding customer onboarding and customer self-service, not only for the technical part, but also for the contract parts, like the upscaling and downscaling can be done by the marketplace. It's transferable via APIs to Incapto and the Cisco portals, and it's a huge relief for our technical guys that usually had to do these things manually.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think, when you are delivering managed service at scale, I think your point of differentiation is, do you give access to the portal for the customer? It is a managed service, so we manage everything, or do you provide that access? And we find that we hear a lot of feedback that co-management is really important, just that ability to prove value to your customers through offering them a simplified dashboard with just right access, cherry-picked functionality.
It's the opportunity to show the customer the information he actually needs. Like, of course, you can always show a full-blown Cisco portal, but there's still the information overflow. It's great for technical guys who have to configure stuff, and it's great to see all the information you can gather there. For customers, having a clear and good-looking dashboard and just being able to see the important KPIs at a glance, that's real benefit. Because honestly, if the GUI is totally overloaded, we simply don't like looking at it. It's too complicated. We don't want it anymore. We're just looking at it once and never again. And if it's clearly structured and actually showing me what I need to see, it's a way better usability and a way better experience, honestly. And another point I actually wanted to add is from a customer's point of view, and that the feedback we've been getting from our customers is the opportunity of the co-management. Like I just said, that being able to make small changes immediately and not having to ticket at my service provider, just being able to reset a password to enable guest keys or whatever. It has to be done quickly, and once again, it needs to be a good experience. And that's actually something Encaptor needs a lot.
Yeah, look, absolutely. The ability to self-service is becoming more and more of a need. None of us like picking up the phone or even writing an email now for support and then having to wait. What do we like? We go online and we look and we try and solve things in our everyday lives. We find that's the same in managed services. What would you say the challenges were for CANCOM, if any, from transitioning from an IT service provider, designing solutions, presenting bills of materials, and now transitioning to be a managed service provider where things are more off the shelf by company size or by number of sites and branches? What would you say the challenges were there?
I think the first challenge was actually coming from the history of system integrator and changing to service provider. It's a huge change in mindset. Usually, as a system integrator, you get great consultants. They're going out to customers, designing networks and whatever. And it's always perfectly engineered for the customer's use case, but it's not scalable. And the change from doing everything individually to standardization is, first of all, change in mindset for technical guys, because they have to think in standards. And on the other hand, it's also a different sales approach. We already mentioned the use cases, the verticals that have to be addressed differently. And first of all, as a account manager, for example, I have to start talking to other guys at my customer's location. I'm not talking with the head of IT anymore. I'm talking to CFOs, I'm talking to the CTOs, CIOs, whatever, and they need to hear different things. They don't care about the already mentioned 4x4 Migo, for example. They care about a functioning environment and totally different things. And it's not, to be honest, not feature packing anymore. That's a huge change, and it's a challenge we're still facing. I think it's just has to evolve. You can't just snap your fingers and switch everybody's minds. So that's process of involvement. And on the other hand, challenge that I think is quite common over here in Germany is that our so-called German Mittelstand, the base of our economy is quite conservative.
Yeah.
And we're talking to a lot of customers that are still, they might say, yeah, okay, I understand the benefits. It's honestly, service is a great idea. I can see the necessity of it. But what happens if I always have the security of having bought the equipment, so it's my own, and I can always find a solution with that. It's Also, a change of mind for customer training, that's also still an evolving process. For example, in the United States, the mentality is a completely different already. And I'm sure it will come over to Germany as well, but it might take another couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you mentioned a couple of key lines there. Building for scale is one of the challenges, and shifting from a traditional IT service provider integrator, is not without its challenges. It is a paradigm shift, right? Just being able to sort of cookie cut and produce those managed services at scale and protect your margins and keep the price in line with what the market's prepared to pay as well. They can't be unwieldy, expensive services being delivered. They need to be pretty tight and well optimized when it comes to provisioning of services.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, look, thank you, Timo. It's been really great talking with you. I hope others who might watch this, other MSPs, will find this discussion valuable. I'll probably take the opportunity just to call out that we will be at Cisco Live in Amsterdam, which is February the 6th to the 10th, and we'll be hosting CANCOM on the Incapto booth, where we'll be talking at length on building managed services for scale. So again, thank you, Timo, for joining us. I wish you a lovely day.
Thanks for having me.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for having me. My pleasure.
Wonderful. Follow us on LinkedIn. That's Incapto, and also CANCOM for further updates on these talks when we're in Amsterdam at Cisco Live. Thanks for watching.
See you there.